Let's talk about the investment and economic outlook in Egypt as well. The latest projections say the economy is on track to grow by about 4% this year. Will that figure hold in your view?
I think it's a target. I think our concern is much bigger than this. And let me try to describe the situation that as I see it in Egypt. Following two revolutions, 2011, 2013, with a complete stoppage of the economy, the government between 2014 up until last year focused on stimulating the economy, rightfully so, building the needed infrastructure for the country, not only for the last 10 years, but actually for the previous 10 years of the lack of investments. And in doing so, we've invested massively, close to $550 billion in roads, 7,000 kilometers of road, building 20 new cities, expanding the footprint of Egyptian population from 6% to almost 11.5%, which is massive in terms of the magnitude only in 10 years. Building the new ports, the capacities. I think today we have the infrastructure that is ready for a new phase. The role of this government is to make sure that we have the right business environment for the private sector to operate and to prosper and to lead the economic development for the next 10, 20 years. So that's our job. Our job, as we speak to investors, is to make sure that we have the right policies, and these policies should be clear, predictable, dependable, and that's what all investors want, and that's what we're trying to do. So going back to your question, I wouldn't focus on 1 year. Our aspiration is to take the economy and the growth in GDP back to 6-7% on a sustainable track. That's what we're working towards. So an immediate 4% or whatever the target is one that we're focusing, but really is the overhauling of the policies to be as attractive, as competitive as possible.
So the real question is, though, how do you get there? Because the reality as well is that economic conditions in Egypt are problematic, particularly when it comes to the inflation outlook, which has been sitting in double digits. And you also get the sense that citizens on the ground and the private sector aren't necessarily convinced on the government's commitment to reform and the speed of progress so far. So what are you doing specifically? Give me some specific examples on how you are enhancing Egypt's investment climate, particularly for foreign investors who are skeptical about what they've seen so far.
Okay. We're focused on 4 policies. I'll start with one policy that is actually mandated by the Central Bank of Egypt. And I think I'm very proud to say that we have a monetary policy that is clear, predictable, that actually very investor friendly, which is inflation targeting and a flexible exchange rate. This is an assurance for businesses to do business in Egypt with a competitive outlook without waiting for a hit. Every several years you have a hit and devaluation waiting for it. And that's an assurance for businesses. On the 3 other policies, let me just give you an example. The fiscal reform. And my colleague, and we're working very closely with the Minister of Finance, have announced already several measures. I call it a groundbreaking reform in the fiscal side, which is simply trying to open a new page between the companies, the taxpayers, and the tax authorities. We have a legacy of long overdue auditing of firms, over-exaggeration of these, but he's putting forward a very simplified, clear policies, and we're going to the parliament with these policies. I'm working with him on a parallel track on what we call the non-tax fees and levies that are burdening the business community in Egypt. And this is a big file. And what we've done so far is that we decided, working together, and that's very important, working as a team, to start eliminate some of these fees and burdens. So we started with one tax, 1% for training tax, and we abolished that tax. That was, as a new team, we want to have these quick wins, and we've done that. The second bigger tax was actually the healthcare tax, or the National Solidarity Healthcare Program. And this is a tax that fundamentally was actually, in my view, was put on the revenues and sales of companies rather than from the bottom line. So we've taken the measure saying, okay, no tax should be taken from sale, it should be from the bottom line. Now we're actually reviewing all the fees and levies that are put on companies, and we're trying to simplify this in one fee, levy, and eventually, in a very short period of time, we'll be able to come back to all the business community operating in Egypt and, of course, potential investors. We tell them we have now an effective tax rate that is very competitive, and from now and for the next 20 years. Trade. Let me give you what we're doing in trade. Trade is under my remit. Trade competitiveness is now at the heart of what we want to do. Where we're starting from, our trade ranking, our competitive ranking, is not something that I'm proud of. And what I decided to do, meeting all the stakeholders on trade, we decided, one, to be on the top 50 within a couple of years,
right.
top 50 in the trade competitiveness. And between now and 2030, I want to be top 20 in trade competitiveness. And one of the key elements in trade is actually the time and cost to release goods at the border.
Yeah.
So the immediate target for this is to cut this time and cost by 75%.
Okay. Can I ask you as well that you want the private sector to contribute 75% of investments by 2030? Is that
Yes.
correct? And you're confident you can get there?
I think we'll do it even before, because it's not only, again, as you change the business environment. I've been an investor all my life. I come from private sector, I'm in private equity. As you rightfully put the right policies, and with the dynamics that are working for Egypt today, the location, the very attractive cost of labor, very attractive cost of engineering, talented pool of, again, almost 31 labor force in Egypt,
right.
Trade agreements, location compounded with the infrastructure that I started with, we have a unique opportunity today to fit within a world that is changing, with the supply chain shift, with the nearshoring, with Europe competitiveness is actually at a big question mark.
Indeed.
Egypt fits perfectly, and I think this will change the narrative.